Okay. So in the last class, we have discussed about what is a recurrent neural network. So where we are using the recurrent neural networks and so on, right? So in the last class, we just saw how a recurrent neural network is applied to predict a word. I mean, to predict a letter in the word hello. That is, if we give HELL, we want the RNN to predict the last letter O. Okay. As a step 7, in the last class, I wanted to make it more clear about the step 7. So here in the step 7, what the RNN is going to do. So here we are going to provide this output values. That is, in the step 6, we got the output values YT. Okay. So we are going to provide these YT values to the softmax activation function. So this softmax activation function is going to give the class-wise probabilities for the next letter. That is, in the vocabulary, how many words are there for our hello in the vocabulary, which we have defined. How many letters are there? H, E, L, and O. Right. So softmax has given us the probabilities. That is, it has given four probabilities. That is 0.41, 0.19, 0.16, and 0.22. So among all these four probabilities, so the probability is high for the letter H. So after giving the letter E, so initially we have given the letter H, and then we have given the letter E. That is, after giving the letter E, so we should get again what? L, right? So, but it is telling that the probability is higher for 0.41, which is for the letter H. That is, after H, and then we have given E, and after E, the network predicted that again the letter next to E is H, but it is wrong, right? So we have to get L, right? So like that, here our RNN did not perform well, isn't it? So what is the reason for this one? Because we hardly trained the network. That is, we did not train the network enough, right? So we have shown it only two letters. Okay, right. For this is the reason it hasn't learned anything yet. Okay. So what we have to do now? So we have to make the machine to learn more. That is, now we have to do some back propagation, and we have to adjust some weights and so on. So with this, we have concluded our last class, right? So now today we are going to see about how these weights are updated in the feedback loop. Okay. So back propagation. All of us know what is back propagation and how do we carry back propagation, as we have discussed these concepts in the previous classes. But now we have to see how back propagation is carried out in a recurrent neural network. So the back propagation in RNN is referred familiarly as BPTT. So why we call this BPTT and all, we'll come to know now. Okay. So in case of forward propagation, we all of us know that we give the inputs, and we the inputs enter and they move forward from one time step to another time step. All the time, as we are discussing with the sequential information, that is the information with respect to time. So the inputs enter and they move forward at each time step. That is, at time step T1, one input moves forward, and at time step T2, another input moves forward, and so on. Okay. So coming to the case of back propagation or backward propagation, again, so in the forward propagation, we are moving forward in time. Now, in order to do back propagation, what we have to do? So we have to move back in time. That is, in order to change the waves, we have to move back in time. So that is the reason we call the back propagation in RNN as back propagation through time, which is nothing but BPTT. Okay. So here, till now we have seen that RNN is provided one input at one time step, and it predicts one output at the same time step, right? Now, so if you see here, this BPTT, that is back propagation through time, works by unrolling all the input time steps. Unrolling means, if you see the diagram onto the left, this is a complete RNN. So if you unfold or if we unroll this RNN, now we have three copies of this particular RNN. See here, in the first copy, we have one input time step and then one output. And for the second copy, again we have one input and one output. And for the third one, we have one input and one output. So at time step t minus 1, we have xt minus 1 and the output yt minus 1. And at time step t, we have xt as input and yt as output. And at time step t plus 1, we have xt plus 1 as input and yt plus 1 as output. So at a particular time step, we have one input time step, one copy of the network and one output. Okay. So this is how this complete RNN has been unfolded into three copies, and each copy is having one input time step and one output. So now what's happened here? Errors are now calculated, and these calculated errors are accumulated for each time step. That is, errors are calculated for every single time step. Okay, so after calculating the error for individual time steps or individual copies, now the network is again rolled back again. That is, it is combined and the weights are now updated. So if you take the case of RNN, if YT is the predicted value and YT bar is the actual value, so how we are going to calculate the error? So the error can be calculated as minus YT bar log YT. Okay, so now finally minus YT bar log YT is for a single copy, but we told that the network is completely rolled up and the weights are updated, right? So the total error is minus sigma YT bar log YT for all the values, for all the error values. So we sum up all these error values and we find out the final error value. Okay, so now here if you see the full sequence, that is, we have taken a word, right? We have taken the word HELLO, hello. So we consider this complete sequence of the word as one training example. So what the total error? The total error will be the sum of the errors at each time step. So the sum of error at hello, the sum of the error at H, at E, at L, and at L and at O. So this completely will be taken and those are summed up and we calculate the total error. So if you observe, as we said in the starting itself, the weights are same at the each time step. So if we observe here for HELLO, so we are calculating the error, let us say some 3 times. Okay, so if it is for 3 times, we can combine it, there is no problem. But what if we unroll the same RNN for hundreds of time steps or for thousands of time steps? So when we are going to unroll this RNN for hundreds and thousands of time steps, really the network is going to take very long time for converging, isn't it? So if these input sequences what we are taking are thousands of time steps, then what happens? So the number of derivatives which are required for updating these weights are also increasing, right? I hope you are understanding, right? When we are calculate the back propagation, that is when we are updating the weights, we use the concept of derivatives, right? The concept of gradients. Okay. So if it is 2 or 3 inputs, there is no problem. But when the input sequence is more, that is, if we give a larger input sequence, then what actually happens? Then the RNN has to calculate all these larger thousands of time steps. Okay. So thousands of derivatives, that is thousands of gradients. Okay. So whenever it is calculating these thousands of gradients, then we have a problem here with RNN. So which causes these weights to either vanish or the weights are going to explode. So whenever the network or whenever the this particular machine, the weights are vanishing or they are exploding, then the machine may either completely stop learning or it may completely make wrong predictions. Okay, so this is the main drawback of RNN if the sequence is large. Okay, if you see here, we have provided only one word, that is HELLO. For that, it is a small word, it is okay. But when we give the large input sequences to the RNN, then RNNs cannot perform because they have to work on thousands of time steps. So these thousands of time steps requires more number of derivatives for updating the weights, right? So these weights can cause the RNN to either vanish or explode. So let us now see what is vanishing and exploding gradient problem. So we already know that RNNs are going to work upon time steps. That is, the present time step T is dependent upon the previous time step, right? So let us say if you wanted to calculate the present time step, that is the present output. So it depends upon the present input and the previous time step, right? So this is the working principle of RNN. So when we are using regular RNNs, that is a simple RNN, then these simple RNNs have a difficulty to learn long range dependencies, that is more than one word or more than some 10 words, 100 words, 10,000 words. So these more number of words are having long range dependencies, right? So if we use regular RNNs for this, then then the RNNs might have difficulty in learning these long range dependencies. Let us say we have taken a sentence like this one: the man who ate my pizza has a purple hair. So here what we are going to describe, we are going to describe about the man who ate our pizza is having a purple hair. So what actually this purple hair means about? Does this tell about the pizza color, or does this tell about the hair color of the man who ate our pizza? Actually, so it is going to tell us about the, or it is going to describe about the man, right? So here the description purple hair is for the man who ate our pizza, but it is not about the pizza. So here we have a long dependency, right? So if, in order to get this purple hair dependency, so it has to calculate all the previous time steps of pizza, who ate my pizza, and then the man. So it has to go long in that particular sequence. So this kind of dependency is what we are going to call it as a long dependency. So now, if we are going to propagate the errors, now we are going to discuss about vanishing gradient problem. So if we are going to propagate the error in this particular long dependency, then what we have to do? Obviously, we have to apply the chain rule. So we already discussed about how chain rule is applied while learning back propagation. So to calculate the error after the third time step, let us say we wanted to calculate the error while doing back propagation after the third time step with respect to the first one. So what we are going to do? We are going to do dou e by dou y3, output at 3, into dou y3 by dou h3, into dou h3 by dou y2, into dou y2 by dou h1, and so on. Okay. So from the third time step to the up to the first time step, we have to do this kind of dependency. Okay. And when we are applying this particular chain rule, and at this moment of time, if any one of the gradients results to 0, okay, we are doing the multiplication here. In this chain rule, we are doing the multiplication. And if any one of the gradient is approaching to 0, or it approaches to 0, as we are doing multiplication, all the other gradients will also rush to 0 exponentially fast, isn't it? So 1 is 0, exponentially in fast amount of time, all the other gradients are also approaching to 0 due to the multiplication. So here the gradient vanishes. So this problem is what we are going to call it as vanishing gradient problem. Okay. So here, if you see here, at this moment of time, these states, that is now the gradients are approaching to 0. So these values will not help the network to learn anything. So this is what we are going to call it as vanishing gradient problem. So the next one is exploding gradient problem. So in the previous case, we saw when the gradients approach to 0. But in this exploding gradient problem, if the derivatives are large, that is if at least one of the derivatives are large, okay, and again we are doing multiplication, eventually what actually happens, this single large derivative will increase exponentially. That is the final value of the complete multiplication will increase exponentially because it is including the multiplication, isn't it? So final the total gradient becomes very large, isn't it? Because if either a single gradient value is increasing or if a multiple gradient values become very high, the final value of the gradient becomes very large. So whenever again this value becomes very large, then this kind of problem we are going to call it as a exploding gradient. Okay. Now let us now compare the vanishing gradient problem and exploding gradient problem. So when we have a comparison between these two problems, the vanishing gradient problem is more complicated. It is more threatening when compared to exploding gradient problem. Why? The reason is that if you take exploding gradient problem, okay, so here we can clip the gradients and we can put a predefined threshold value. Okay, so we put a particular threshold value, and if that particular value, I mean our gradient value crosses that particular threshold value, then we'll take some measures, isn't it? So here we have a predefined threshold value, that is the upper limit on to how much value the gradient should reach. But in vanishing gradient, we cannot have that kind of thing. So that is the reason why vanishing gradient problem is considered more complicated and more threatening when compared to the exploding gradient problem. But also there are some ways to handle this gradient problem also. There are some architectures like LSTM, long short-term memory, and GRU, gated recurrent units. So these architectures, LSTM and GRU, are used to deal with this vanishing gradient problem. Anyways, in the next forthcoming lecture, we'll be discussing in a detailed manner about what is LSTM, how it is going to work, and what is GRU, and how it is going to work. And there we come to know how they are going to deal with this vanishing gradient problems. Okay, now let us now come with some notations. Okay, we'll just see a small representational way of how the problem in RNN is identified. Okay, let us take a sentence. Okay, and we represent that sentence with X. If we see here, Harry and Hermione invented a new spell. If you see this particular sentence, we represent each word of this sentence with a notation called X on the top T. In the angular basis, we'll represent T. That is, T is nothing but time step. If you see X power 1, I am just representing that it has power 1, but it is not power 1. X, that is input at time step 1, and then input at time step 2, and so on. Okay, input at time step T. So let us now say X power 1 equal to Harry. Okay, and then X power 2 equal to Hermione, and so on. So if you see, we give the input X, that is the sentence X, and the output is Y is equal to 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so now we may get a doubt that how we get this output Y equal to 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. Let us now see. If you see here 1 in the output means it represents the name. So what are the names in the given input sentence? Harry is one name and Hermione is another name, right? So here 1 is going to represent the word which represents the person's name. And if it is not the person's name, that is other than the person's name, we have the output 0. Okay, so this is how we got the output as Y equal to 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, now let us see some most commonly used notations while we are working with RNNs. So T suffix X is the length of the input sentence. T suffix Y, the length of the output sentence. X power I in brackets is the ith training example, and X power I with T is nothing but the tth training of ith training example. Okay, and Tx power I is length of the ith input sequence. See, Tx means the length of the input sentence, right? And Tx power I means length of the ith input sentence. Okay, so these are the most frequently used representations. Now, how we are going to represent these individual words in a sequence? So we have different types of words, right? So we are going to give different types of words as input sequence. So how do we represent this? So we depend upon vocabulary. Okay, so while we were discussing about the problem hello, that is HELLO. So what is the vocabulary we have? H, E, L, and O. So to represent these words, we depend upon the vocabulary. Okay, so vocabulary is now we are going to use the list of words which we use in our representation. That is, we are going to use lot of words. That is, in our input, we are going to use lot of words, right? So these list of words are going to be used in our representation. Let us say we'll take an example of a small vocabulary. If you see, it is a matrix. It is a column matrix where we have A, and then we have Aaron, and then we have some other values are there, and again we have a word called and then again we have some other words, and then we have Harry, and then after some other words we have Potter, and after some other words we have Zulu. So this is a small example of how a vocabulary might look like. Okay, now, so what is the size of the vocabulary? The size of the vocabulary depends upon the application. So the kind of application we are going to use. If we are going to use only hello, what is the size of our vocabulary? It is a matrix. It consists of only 4 characters. That is H, E, L, and O. Right. So how we are going to make this vocabulary? So how do we construct this vocabulary? So if we are using a single word hello, it is very easy for us to construct the vocabulary because the only characters in that word are H, E, L, and O. But we have more number of input words, then constructing a vocabulary is somewhat difficult. So one potential way how we are going to make vocabulary is we pick the most frequently occurring words. So we have some training set, right? So we pick the most frequently occurring words and we make the vocabulary out of those words. Okay. So if you wanted to represent the word Harry, okay, so when we wanted to represent the word Harry, now this word Harry is in the 4075th, that is 4075th position in our vocabulary. So we'll do what we'll do one hot encoding. So in the last class we saw what is a one hot encoding and how do we represent the words in one hot encoding. So now we represent Harry with the one hot encoding. So at 4075 position, at 4075th position, we are going to represent the value 1 and all the other positions we represent with the value 0. So this is our first input, that is x onto the power 1, that is x1, that is input 1 at time step t1. We are going to have this particular value. Okay, next. So to generalize what we do, xt is a one hot encoded vector. So we'll put 1 in the 4075th position and all the remaining words what we'll do, we represent them as 0. Let us say now we have some input and that input we have not represented in our vocabulary. If that our word is not present in our vocabulary, so we simply write a tag called UNK tag. Okay, so we write that UNK tag and then we add it into the vocabulary. Okay. So finally, now we are going to use this RNS, that is recurrent neural networks, to learn the mapping from the input to output. Okay, so that is to map the input to output. We either use X or Y or both X and Y or some sequences. Okay, that is when we map from X to Y. Okay, so either X or Y or X and Y or some other kind of sequences also we can use. Okay, but the thing is that the standard neural networks. So in the previous units we discussed or we learned about some standard neural networks. The problem is with standard neural networks, we cannot work with the standard neural networks when we are using these sequence problems. That is, the question is, why can't we use the standard neural network for the sequence problems? So let us see. Let us say we build the following neural network, that is the inputs x1, x2, so on up to xtx, and we have outputs y1, y2, so on up to yty. So if you see here, there are basically two problems with the standard neural networks. The inputs and outputs which we have do not have a fixed length. See, in the starting itself, while we are discussing about RNNs, RNNs work with a variety of inputs and variety of outputs as we discussed, right? But here in our general or regular neural networks, the inputs and outputs must be same. But here, the inputs and outputs in our real-time scenarios are not having a fixed length. That is, some inputs can be of 10 words, while some other inputs can be less than 10 words and greater than 10 words. But the same is true for the output also. So eventually, if the input varies, obviously the output also varies. The second drawback with the standard neural networks is that we cannot share these features which were learned across different positions of text. That is, we cannot establish relationship between these words within the given text if we are going to use a standard neural network. So that is the reason why we do not use the standard neural networks when we are working with the problem which includes sequences. Okay, next. So what do we need now? So now we need a representation which is going to help us to pass through different sentences. That is, the input sentences may be different, and also we wanted to reduce the number of parameters also, because we want the training to be taken in a less amount of time. So we wanted to obviously reduce the number of parameters. So this is where actually the recurrent neural networks come into play. So if you see here, a typical RNN, a general RNN looks like this. If you see, so this is a power 0, that is activation at the 0th layer, and now we give the input x1, x2, x3, so on, xtx, and we got the output y cap 1, y cap 2, y cap 3, and so on up to y cap ty. And there are activations from layer 0 to layer 1, a power 1, and from layer 1 to layer 2, a power 2, and so on. So if you see, the first word is x1, okay, and we feed this first word into our recurrent neural network, and it predicts an output some y cap or y dash of 1. Okay, so finally we are going to repeat this process until all the words in the input completed, that is until we reach xtx, which is going to generate the last output y cap or y dash ty. So now why we are using RNNs? So RNNs have the capability to scan the data from left to right sequence. Okay, and also now another important point is that the parameters which the RNNs are using for every time step, these parameters are shared. Okay, that is the parameters are shared between the following ways. That is each input and the hidden layer, and the parameter is shared between every time step, and the parameters are shared between the hidden layer and the output. I'm repeating again, the parameters in the RNN are shared between each input and the hidden layer, and between every time step, and between the hidden layer and the output. So now if we are making predictions for X3, so what we'll have, we'll also have the information about X1 and X2. So this is the main reason, right, why we are going for RNNs while we are working with sequence information. But there is a weakness of RNN also. The major or potential weakness of RNA is that it takes only the information from the previous time step. That is, if you say, I am going to college today. So now present at time step, let us say I is at T1, am is at T2, going is at T3. So when we are working at T3, it takes into consideration the T2 and T1, but it does not take into consideration about the next words, that is the next time shift, T4 and T5. Okay. So if you do not take into consideration the prediction of the next words, the prediction of the next words maybe is somewhat wrong. That is, if you do not consider the future things, the prediction is somewhat wrong. Okay. So for this reason, we have another type of variation in RNN, which is nothing but the bidirectional RNN. Okay. So here the RNN, our general RNN takes the previous time steps. Okay. And it does not take these time steps from the next coming inputs. It only considers the previous values. It does not consider the future values. So if we can consider the future values also, we can predict that particular output more efficiently when compared to the normal RNN. So this kind of problem can be solved using the bidirectional RNN. And when we are discussing about bidirectional RNN, we'll make it clear about how the bidirectional RNN is going to work. Okay. So let us now look at the forward propagation. How does the forward propagation happens in the RNN model? So we know A0, that is initial activation, is a vector of all the zeros. And from the initial activation, later we are going to calculate the next activations, isn't it? So initially the first activation matrix is a vector of all zeros. Then how we get A1, that is activation at first layer, how we are going to get, as a function of G, that is we apply some function, and then we multiply that WAA into A0 plus WAX into X1 plus B, where this B is a bias. And accordingly, we will get the output. So Y1, that is output in the layer 1, is equal to Z dash of WYA into A1 plus BY. So these are representations we have already learned in the previous classes. So if we generalize this formula, what happens? So AT, that is activation at the Tth input, that is final activation at that particular layer, is equal to Z of WAA into A power T minus 1 plus WX into XT plus BA, and output is generalized as YT equal to Z dash of YA into AT plus B1. Okay. So far we have discussed about the RNNs, where the length of the input sequence and the length of the output sequence was equal, isn't it? So we came to know that RNNs work with different input sequences and different output sequences. That is clear. But till now we have saw an example of RNN where the length of the input sequence and the length of the output sequence was equal. But what if the length differs? That is, what if the length of the input sequences differ? And what if the length of the output sequences are going to differ? So for this reason, we have some variations or different types of RNNs. Okay. So we can use different types of RNNs based on the sequence length. That is, for one kind of sequence length, we use one type of RNN. For another type of sequence length, we use another type of RNN. So there are basically some categories, some types of RNNs. The first one is many to many. So the name entity recognition. Name entity recognition is, if you see the input X as given, Harry and Hermione invented a new spell. So here we wanted the machine to identify the names. That is, here the names are Harry and Hermione. So here we are going to use many to many. Here we have input as a sequence of words, and for each word we have to predict whether it is a name or not. Okay. So here if you see the diagram on the bottom, so we have many number of inputs and we have many number of outputs. So if we use as many number of words, it has to identify as many number of names in this particular input. So this is many to many type of RNN. The next one is many to one. So if you see the sentiment classification in the starting of the in the starting of the previous class itself, we discussed about sentiment classification. The movie is good. It is a positive sentiment. I don't find anything great in this movie. That is a negative sentiment. The movie is okay. It means a neutral sentiment. That is, here we are going to you input more number of words, but it is going to give only one output, whether it is a positive sentiment or negative sentiment or a neutral sentiment. So we have a more number of input sequences, but we have only one output. So this is what we are going to call it as many to one problem. And for this one, we will use many to one type of RNN. And the next one is one to many. So one to many means in music generation. So when we give the input as music and we want that machine to predict the lyrics using the music as input, so we will give only a single lyric, but it is going to predict the lyrics, that is lyrics in words. There are many words which generates from a single input input file, right? So this is one of the examples of one to many type of RNN. So now there is most frequently used RNN presently used very popularly in the industry is that if we take an input sentence in one language, now we wanted to translate it to another language. So this is also many to many problem. But the difference between the many to many problem we have discussed previously is that so this is also a many to many problem, but the length of the input sequence might be or it might not be equal to the length of the output sequence, because one language that is telling about a particular situation in one language can have 10 words, and the same situation can be told in another language with some 5 words, or it may lead to 20 words. That is, the input sequence length is maybe or may not be equal to the output sequence. So at this moment of time, in these kind of cases, we have another thing called an encoder part and decoder part. So here the encoder part reads the input sequence and the decoder translates it to the output sequence. That is how this encoder decoder sequences are working and all. These also we are going to learn in our forthcoming class.